In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can create a customized template and navigation header for your WordPress website using the Divi theme. Now, it's a pretty straightforward process, and there's a few options. We can do it. We can do everything in the theme customizer, and we're going to take it a step forward. If you really want to customize your navigation header, we're going to use the ThemeBuilder to step that up again. Now, the first thing I want to show you is I've got a little test logo put together for this sort of make-believe business called Pivot. I'm going to use this as a basis of the design for the site because I want this website to match my branding and my logo to a degree. Two things I want to take note of is the font that I used, which is Poppins, and a color. Now, if you haven't got a logo, I do recommend you could use something like Canva or Brand Crowd. I've got videos on how to use those, create something pretty basic. I'll put those in the description below. But for now, let's get on to the website. Let's get to it. All right, so I'm logged into WordPress and I've got the Divi theme installed. So if I head down the bottom left here, right down the bottom, there's Divi. And when I hover over that, I get some options. The first thing I'm going to do is go to theme options so we can upload our logo and just check a few bits and pieces before we get started. So first of all, there's a few options you're going to want to check out here, and you can come back at any time and do this. You can have a fixed navigation bar so that when you scroll, the navigation stays there. I prefer to have that turned off. But I do recommend just going through and checking some of this stuff out. I do want to use Google Fonts. I don't want to include Google Maps script at this stage. I can show which social media icons I want to display. I can add in URLs to those so I can use them as part of the template. So let's just say we're going to stick with Instagram and Facebook, and we'll get rid of Twitter, RSS, because these are actually possibly going to show up on our template when we're putting it together. And then you've got a few other options here. Just want to check that out. A back to top button, smooth scrolling so everything looks nice and smooth. And you can add some custom CSS. The other thing I want to do, so these are all pretty basic. You can do as you please there. But the other thing I want to do before I go any further, I want to head into this performance tab. Divi has these awesome performance options that makes your website go faster. While I'm building it though, I do want to turn things like the dynamic module framework off. And anything to do with CSS, dynamic CSS, critical CSS, I'm just going to turn those off because if there's an error, I might not be getting the result that I'm actually trying to put together. And I can come back and turn these on when I'm done and just check that out. So I won't show that, but obviously when you're done with your website, turn those back on, check your website, make sure everything's looking good, and you can choose whether to turn those on or off. So we're going to go back to general now. We're going to upload our logo. So I click the logo section here. I go across to upload. And I can choose an image from the media library, or I can go to upload files. I'm going to select some files to upload. Now I've got a couple of versions of the logo here. So while I'm at it, I'm actually going to upload these 3 images. This one's like an icon, which is like the emblem I just quickly threw together. And then just a couple of logos, one for use on a dark background and one for use on a light background. And like I said, you can get these done at Brand Crowd, or you can do something up Canva, but let's go open. And we're going to go with, I'm sort of feeling a bit of a light navigation header today. So I'm going to go with Pivot, the black text. I'm going to click Set as Logo. And now that we're done, I click Save Changes. We get the green tick. And now our logo is actually there. So if I head out to the website by clicking up the top here, I can have a look at what we've got. Okay, so you can see here we've got the basic Divi options, except we have our logo. Everything else is pretty much a clean slate. You can see we've got a basic website. I've got a bit of a messy navigation here. And I've also got a few pages, such as a second home page. We're going to use that as a guide when we're customizing our template, just to see how everything looks. And if you want to actually use this template, I'll show you how to import it and add it to your page. So you can do that because there's a link to the description below on where to download this quick little setup I've done here. But essentially, we're a blank slate and we're good to start customizing. The first thing I want to touch on is this menu system here. There is just too many items here and it's a little confusing. This is because Divi pulls pages and blog categories by default. You can go into your Divi settings and there's a navigation section. You can turn things on or off. What I recommend is doing this quickly. I'm going to go to Pivot and go to Theme Customizer. Now yours won't say Pivot. It'll be whatever the name of your website is. We're going to go to Theme Customizer, and we're going to go down to Menus here. Now, what we're going to do, I've got 2 existing menus which I've turned off for the sake of the video. I'm zoomed in a bit, so it's actually, I'm going to zoom back out. Now we can see all of our navigation items at the top here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new menu. I'm going to call this one main menu white. This is going to be the white area of our menu, this area where the logo is, because I want all the items I put in here to show up across there. So I tick primary menu, and then I click next. And I'm going to start adding items to this menu. So I'm going to add some items. I'm going to add, say, home, portfolio, contact, about us. I'm going to move this about us next to home and just reorganize things a bit. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole process of doing a menu. I do have another video for that, which I'll pop in the description below for using menus. But the idea is you simply go through here, add the pages you want, any posts, anything else you want to add there. When you're done, make sure the primary menu is ticked, and then we click publish. You see we now have a nice simple menu with only these 4 items that we want. The next thing I'm going to do very quickly and is just to get this a menu at the top here, is I'm actually going to go over to back to menus. I'm going to create another menu. I'll call this one top menu. I'm going to tick secondary so that it shows up at the top right over here and click next. Add items. I'm going to go blog. And I can go in here. I'm going to click on blog so we get a little option. I'm going to say read our blog and just put that one there and add to items, publish. And I'm just going to X out of this for now. So you can see here we have some basic navigation items, and we have read our blog here. Now, one thing I did forget before, we're going to actually go and do a couple of things just to get set up, and then we'll be able to really go in and play with our basically our template. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got this home page here. Now, it's actually not the home page I wanted to use. So I've got to change a few things around because at the moment, this is our blog and our blog is actually nothing. If I go to our blog page, you see we've got nothing there. So I've got three things I want to do. One, I want to get this home page up with our layout that we set up. I want to actually have the blog at the blog page, home at the home page, and I want to get this color so I can get it throughout the website. So that's what I'm going to do next. We're going to head back into the dashboard by going up here to the name of the website. The first thing I'm going to do is go to settings and down to reading. And you have to have pages published for this to work. So if you don't have any pages published, you won't get these options. Where it says your latest post, I'm going to click a static page. The home page will be home. The post page will be blog, and I click save. So this will so the home page won't display the blog. It will simply move those to a blog page. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. However, I still recommend it because you can add the blog manually into the home page in one of the future videos we're going to go through. And next step we want to do is we actually want to go into the Divi settings, theme options. We got our logo uploaded, and I kind of skipped this. I sort of forgot to do it. We want to add the green from the logo in here so we can pick it whenever we want to. So what I'm going to do is there's a website you can use. It's called imagecolorpicker.com. So we go to imagecolorpicker.com and you can use your image. So I can browse or drop an image. I upload one of these logos, get this emblem. And you can see I can hover over any pixel and pick a color. There's not many colors to pick here, but you can see my color here, 66FFCC. I can copy that color to the clipboard, and when I tab across, I can click on this green here, highlight this text and hit backspace, and then I just right click and paste, hit enter. And you can see the green is now good to go. So now I've actually got things set. I've got my logo in place. I've got the green droplet here, so I can grab that color whenever I want to. I'm going to save these changes. And now we're going to start editing the actual template. Now, one thing I recommend if we go back out to the home page before we start is it's good to have this because you can actually, if you don't have a page existing, then you've got to figure out what the button looks like, but you can't necessarily see it, or what your headings look like, your text, that sort of thing. So I'm going to show you very quickly how you can use this template. Like I said, there's a link in the description below. I'll show you how to import it onto the page so that you can use it while we're doing this process. So we're going to go to Enable Visual Builder. And what we're going to do, we're going to scroll down, and obviously this is already here, but I'm just going to click on this little purple dot down the bottom, click the down arrow and the up arrow here, go to import, and wherever you've saved this layout, if you go and download it, just go to no file selected and choose the file, which is this test layout, hit open, replace existing content, or you can turn that off and add it to the bottom, and we import the builder layout. So now we have this layout when we're customizing the theme, so we can see exactly what it looks like. I'm going to exit the Visual Builder and save and exit because we want to save those changes. And now we're ready to start editing. Now in the back end, if you're in the dashboard, under the Divi option there's Theme Customizer, but we don't need to go back there. So we're going to highlight, we're going to visit this page that we want with this layout, highlight over here and go to Theme Customizer. So now I have my layout here. I can see my heading 1, my heading 2, a button, all the headings. I can zoom out a little bit to get a better look. And I can go through, and these are all the options we have, but it's a little bit more daunting to look at than it actually is. Now, a good place to start is under your general settings. Now, some of these are actually more to do with WordPress and less to do with Divi, but it's good to go in here and check out your site identity and add a site icon to sort of match up with your site if you haven't already done that. So I'm going to click here, add this site icon, and that will show up on the tab at the top of the browser. So that way I have my logo branded up there as well. There's a few other settings such as layout settings. Now, with Divi, you've got a few options. So, well, the first thing I'm going to do actually is just tab out for a second. We'll come back to that. What we're going to do is go to background here, and you can choose a background color. And the green seems to be absent for some reason, but every now and then it will play up like that. But yeah, we can choose something similar, such as that, or we can add a background image. So I'm going to click on here. Let's just add a basic background image like this. And part of this template I've set up is a little section so you can see the image through the back there. You can see it's either fixed in the background or it's on scroll. So that way as you scroll, it scrolls as well. This will cause the image to repeat down the page. So if you use one large image like this, fixed is a good idea because at least you don't have to have a too large an image that goes on forever, or you can just make it a seamless pattern and stick with scroll. But for now, we've got this. They don't really match up, but that's good enough for the sake of the video. And you can see you've got some options here. You can stretch the background. But we're going to head back to layout settings. The first thing I want to look at and show you is we've got a layout here which is full width. We can enable a boxed layout, which actually boxes. If I zoom out a bit, it actually puts a box in the center of the background. And I can take the website content width and make it less or more, and actually stick with a boxed layout if I think that's the way I want to do things. So you've got a few options there straight away, which make a big difference. And if you get to say maybe the About Us page, we can choose a custom sidebar width. So I've got this sidebar over here. I can tick this and make the sidebar larger or smaller. So you've got a few options before you get into too much of a complicated sort of routine with this. It's quite easy to go in and make some basic customizations. Our green is shown up for some reason, so we've got that there. If you do see that, I recommend highlighting and just copying that just in case. So we've got this here, we've got our boxed layout. I'm actually going to take that off. I prefer full width personally, but everything you do, it's a pretty handy option to have. So we've got our layout settings, and now we've got typography. So I want to change the body link color. I don't want it to be the full green. If I go back home, you'll see what I mean. It's just a bit hard to read against the white. But what I can do is move down here, maybe go a little bit of blue, crank this up, and get more of a brighter, sort of darker, and also more impactful color. And that way my link color is sort of more matching with what we're doing here. But this is where a lot of the typography section comes in. At the moment, it's 14 pixels for our basic paragraph type over here. 14 I find is a little bit small. 16 is generally the minimum I'll do, especially if I'm doing a client site. I can change the line height to make it more spaced out. And the headers, I can really bump those up, make them nice and big if I want to. And these are your heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4. Those are your tags within, like your HTML tags or your levels in WordPress you can play with. You can even play with letter spacing. You can cram it together. You can change the line height again. So you've got a few options there to get that looking okay. As you can see here, you can go full capitals, play with these settings, get it looking the way you want. Now, I mentioned earlier that my font for the logo is Poppins. So I'm actually going to go into my header font and I'm going to choose Poppins by scrolling down. Because Poppins is available here because it's a Google font, I can choose Poppins and I have this Poppins font here. The other thing is the default theme font doesn't look too bad, but I can choose something else. There's so many different fonts available. You can scroll through these. I won't go through them now because it will just simply take forever. You can see how many fonts there are, and you've got a whole range of options there for your fonts. But for the sake of this, I'm actually going to stick with Poppins again, just because it's consistent, it's simple, nice and easy. Now, the black on the logo here isn't as black as the heading is a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go to the header text color, click on that, I get my little drop down. I'm going to choose straight black. I'm going to leave the text as a bit of a gray because it adds a nice little slight contrast. And I can see here that everything's starting to take shape. So that's the typography. We can see how our text is. At any stage, if you want to save, you can publish. And we can keep going from there. So that's our initial setup for the typography and the layout. And we're going to move on down to the header and the navigation. So the header format there's a few different options here as well. What I'm going to do though, before we get ahead of that, is I'm actually going to skip ahead and set up some of the header, and then we can show you those different options and how they work. We can start with the easiest thing, which is header elements. There's a search icon over here that I can turn on or off. I can turn these social media icons on or off. As I mentioned, those are linked up in the Divi settings. You'll see a section there to add the URLs. But you can also add a phone number and an email. And you can see at the top left here, we've got our phone number and email. I'm going to leave the phone number out. I'm just going to say pivot@gmail.com, although that's probably an actual email address. Don't go emailing that person. Pivot_test. So that is our email address, or maybe just hello@pivotlifestyle.com or something like that. Not an actual domain, but you get the idea. I'm going to tab back. And one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go bottom up for this one, because the one thing that's bugging me at the moment is this blue color at the top. That's actually our secondary menu. So if I go to the secondary menu bar here, I'm going to pick my background color, choose our green. And the text color is almost impossible to read, so I'm going to make the text color black. And now that sort of matches up a bit better. Now you want to sort of match the drop down menu as well. So if you have any items that have drop down menus and things like that, you can go to the menu color. The background I'm going to make white, or no, I'll make it that green, and the menu text color I'll make black. So it's sort of good to have the two colors repeated for consistency, because if you have a little drop down, that'll actually match that top. So now things are starting to look a little bit more branded and nice, and we haven't even gone into the Divi Builder to fully customize. So we're actually going to go back a step, because we're happy with this for now. Although, once again, I can adjust things like text size. I can make that much larger, letter spacing, all the usual settings. You can just play with those. And at the moment, you can see it's confined to the width of the navigation. If I make this full width, it goes to the very extremities of the page, and that way you have a more full width style header. I'm going to turn that off. And we get similar options then for the primary menu. We go through, active link color. I want to make that the green. However, maybe I'll crank that up, make it a little darker again. So it just kind of, if you look over here, shows up a bit better. The text color is slightly transparent. I want to choose black and make sure this is full, because I can make it fully transparent or just 100% strength. And go through and basically check our colors again. So active link color, background color is white. Drop down menu background is also white. They have this little line above the menu. You can make that green as well. When you get a drop down, it just shows a little line at the top of the box. I recommend you can make that whatever color you want, as long as it matches your brand, it will look okay. But anywhere where it says text, we want that to be dark for light backgrounds and light for dark backgrounds. So you can see here we've got light background colors and dark foreground colors, and you can do whatever you want with those to make them look the way you want. So we set up the colors, and now we can really play with some of the fun stuff with the sizing over here. We can actually make the menu much higher. And if I make it really high, maybe that logo is too big, I can decrease the logo height, and we get this really nice thick header. I can change the text size for the navigation, crank that up if I want to, make it bold. I've got a whole bunch of options here just to, and they're only basic, but you can achieve a lot with them. Once again, maybe I think that's a little too thick, so I knock that menu back. Maybe not quite that small, but maybe I want this logo to be a bit more empowering, so I bump that up as well. So pivot, lifestyle blog. One thing that's bugging me actually is this, so I'm actually gonna make that a gray. Okay, and now we have our basic header set up. All we need to do is set up the rest of the template, but what we're seeing here is starting to look a little more branded. If we go to some of these other pages, like About Us, you can see things looking a little more branded to what we've set up. The blog, things are looking nice. So you can see how things are starting to take shape before we start getting into the real meat of the design on each page. So I'm actually going to go up top left here and go back. Okay, now I've actually recorded the whole video and realized I missed this, so I'm inserting it in here just quickly so you can see. Now I've done all this and set this up. If I go back to the header format of the header and navigation, where it says header style, I can change it to centered. And you see we get this sort of thing where the text is centered and the logo is centered, the text appears underneath. We have a centered inline logo, so it sits off centered there like that. I'm not sure why we're getting this right offset, but when you do it, it shouldn't do that. We've got a lot. There's always little glitches sometimes. If I actually save this and go to another page, you might find it corrects itself. And it has. So yeah, you can see we've got this nice centered layout if we want that. We've got to slide in. So if I click this here, and then you slides in on the side, and you can further customize that as you get different settings there to play with. And the same with full screen, same kind of thing. You click the hamburger icon, you get this really nice full screen menu, which you can also customize just like the other one by heading back and slide in full screen header settings you can change there. So same as before, colors, fonts, that kind of thing. It's a bit hard to read like this, so I'd probably make that text black, but you get the idea. Gone a bit too far. So the other thing you can look at is if I go back to default, I can enable vertical navigation. Now this is a little bit different again. If I click that, the navigation appears on the left over here. So I can change the menu to the right, to the left, and I can still change some of these settings to some basic effect. Slide in once again, which I think is a little odd with that particular one, but you can go in quite easily and make changes. Like I said, for some reason you're going to get this, but if you save it, head in, head out, you'll find it shouldn't look like that. Or you can just change the settings around. Hopefully it lands. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But there you go. So you can see it's just more to do with the preview. And again, I can go into the primary menu and change the logo max height if I want to, make it bigger or put it back. But for now, I'm going to keep it with default because I think that's what looks best. Go back again. And the idea is you just want to go through these settings and check them out. I won't cover them in as much detail because a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory. But if I go down to the footer here and scroll down, you can see I've got a layout here with 4 columns. Maybe I want to make that 3 columns and have 3 columns across, or maybe 1 giant column across. It's really not a big deal. You've got a few choices there, and you can basically customize that as well. The footer background color, we can make that green if we want to. Don't recommend that. We'll go back to the black, and we're just going to stick with 1 for now. And although one of the widgets has disappeared, you can go into your footer widgets, which we're going to cover this later on in the video, adding footer widgets in here. But essentially you go out, and down to your widgets, footer area 1. Although they've now actually changed the widget settings on WordPress, so we will come back to that. I've got a few basic ones in there for now though, so whoops, bouncing around a little bit here, sorry. Now back into footer, our widgets here is where, I'll just go back to the layout and just make it our 4 columns so we can see what we're looking at. So we go to our widgets section here, and we can change the header text size. I generally like this area to be a little more subtle because it's not necessarily like what I call main content. And it's also got that really crummy blue color. So I'm going to click on this. I'm actually going to go with like a lighter gray because it's not really your main content. You don't want it to sort of be too standoutish. So the bullet color I'll make about the same. The link color we can make a little lighter. The text color, we can dull that a little bit as well. And we get a bit more of a subtle sort of footer down the bottom here. Maybe we duck that down a bit more. So you can go through, as before, change all the settings for your text, the colors, the text size, and make that the way you want it to. Footer elements, you can show the social media icons down the bottom here if you want to, or you can turn them off. The footer menu, you can actually add a footer menu. If you go on your menu system and tick footer menu, a little menu appears at the bottom. Have fun with that. It's pretty simple. There's not a lot to it, but I don't think it really needs to be covered because all you need to do is go into your menus here. And you can see if I choose this menu, we've got footer menu. So I just go back to footer. Now bottom bar, if I click on bottom bar, that's this very bit down the bottom that says this page is protected by copyright. I can change that information here by adding HTML. For one, I can change this typo where it says protect. Now it says protected down the bottom here. If I want that to stand out, I can get that text color, make it white. I can dull it down. And the background color can be green if I want it to be, like that. Black is better, I think. And you've got the same options there to customize that area, make it look the way you want it to. Maybe you want it to be slightly lighter just to be separate. So you've got a nice little footer area there as well. So that's the footer. The footers are generally pretty handy. You can put in, some address details. We're going to do all this stuff later. We're going to basically go through and customize the footer in the theme builder as well. But this gives you an idea on how to get started with that. Now, buttons. One of the reasons I have this page here is because we want to see the button while we adjust it. Quite often when you're doing this, you don't actually see the button, so you're playing with the button style without any reference. So what we're going to do, we're going to actually turn that size up a bit. Now the button is set to capitals. So I'm going to untick the capitals down here to get that. Now, if you go straight down here, if you've got a thought on how you want it to look, I want it to match our branding. I want the text color to actually be white. And I want the background color maybe to be black. And at the moment, it's transparent, so I drag this bar right up. And you see our button looks like this. But it does kind of blend in a little bit. Maybe we want it to stand out a bit more like our branding, because that green color can act like an action color that draws the eye and people click on it. So what I'm actually going to do instead is there's actually a border color here. I'm going to make the border color black and the background color green. So this means that the text is white, it's a bit hard to read. So now we go up and make the text black. So you can actually have a play and see what you think looks best. I think this looks okay. The only thing is I want that border width to be a little thicker, and I don't like the square look. I prefer something a bit rounder. So where I've got the border radius here, I can turn that and I can round the edges slightly, or I can crank it right up and get a nice little circular button. And once again, letter spacing, you can play with that. You can change the font if you want to. I think the theme's default font, whatever you chose in typography, is going to choose that. But if you want to choose a different font for buttons, you can do that too. Now you can add a button icon. I'll just say yes. It'll reload the page. If I scroll down a bit. So now when I hover over the button, a little arrow pops up. Boom, like that. Show only on hover, yes, or you can have it show at all times. Having a play with these settings, you can really get a good idea of what you can customize. Now, I'm not really happy with that hover, so they actually have, if I go back, buttons hover style here. Once again, I can change the text color. Maybe I make it white, make that background color black, and maybe I crank that border radius up to full again so that I get this nice hover over. Now, when I made that background color black, I didn't drag this up to make it full strength. So now I have this. And that's how we've adjusted our buttons. Pretty straightforward. And the blog, this here is it's just pretty much the little bits and pieces. So if I go into read our blog here, it's got default settings here, such as our meta. You can turn these off in the Divi theme settings as well, but we'll go into that later. So the meta text size, I can actually change around this, but it's actually, I can see now, if I actually have to open the blog post for it to show up. So it's not for the blog page itself. So you can see here, we've got our test post. I want the header size to be quite large. Maybe I want it to be quite big and grabbing. But the meta line height, I can adjust that for spacing and make the text size quite small or quite large if I want to. So you can go through and play with all those settings as you would before to get things looking exactly how you want when you open a blog post. One of the things we're going to cover later in this series is actually how to create a custom blog post template, even with widgetized areas you can use. And it's going to be a little bit more, probably a bit more well designed, if that makes sense. Now, mobile styles is an area you just want to go and touch on. You can see what we look like when we're looking at a tablet. So if I click on tablet, I can change the text size and some areas here. Same thing for phone. It'll show up phone size, and I can adjust. So the text is a little bit small there, so maybe I make the headings a bit bigger. And you can make some adjustments for phone and across devices. So that way you've got a nice functional website that is ready for phones and other devices. Now the mobile menu is this little extra section here. We can choose to hide the image for the logo. I prefer to keep it. But we can also make the text color like bright red if we want to, which looks pretty gross. So we'll stick with the black. Or we can even make the background color that green. So you can change the menu to look a little bit different if that's what you want as well. We'll go back to white. So that's all in mobile styles here. Now when you get to color schemes, I don't recommend playing with that at all necessarily, because if I choose one of these, it'll override the colors I've set. So you kind of want to do that first, but to be honest, I don't even really know why it's there. I would ignore it. And the rest of these are WordPress settings. You've got your menus, widgets, homepage, and additional CSS. So now I'm going to publish those settings because I'm pretty happy with the way that looks with the website. I'm going to X on out of there. And now our website looks the way I want it to. I've got this section here, showcased here. I go to our blog. Everything is sort of branded. It's very basic because we don't have a lot of great content in there yet. We've just got some dummy content because it is just a test site. But it's really starting to look the way I want it to. A good logo and some sort of a unique choice of colors and a nice bold font really makes a difference here. So you can see how we've done that. Now the next step is actually using the Divi theme builder to customize your header and get a more unique result if you're not happy with this basic layout. So we're going to actually go back to the dashboard and look at that. We're going down to the Divi menu and going to Theme Builder. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a global header, but then we can also show you afterwards how you can use that header only on particular pages. So to start off with, I'm going to click on Add Global Header here. We've gone to Theme Builder, Add Global Header, and we're going to build a global header. We're going to build from scratch. Now, you might find that Divi loads twice every so often. I'm not sure why that is. It's a little bit annoying, but it's just one of those weird things that seems to happen. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with a single row. And what we're going to do is, there's a section here, I believe, for your navigation or menu. Here we are, menu. So you can see our menu that up here, our basic menu. And we can choose one of the other menus if we choose to as well. So we can keep adding. So one thing I want to cover before we get into this is when it comes to Divi, if I add a section here, it adds it's a full section to place smaller sections within. So I add this section, I can choose a few different things here. Specialty is a little bit unique. I won't go into that today. Full width is just one wide section that takes up the full width of the page, which we are going to sort of look at some stage when we're building the site. For now, we're going to go with regular, and this adds a section. And then we can add in a row which hosts columns. So let's say I want to actually have 5 columns. You can see here, if I X out of this, our blue highlighted box is just the section. We can add multiple rows within that section. And these rows contain columns. And within these columns, you can add in modules of content such as text, images, or anything else. So if I click plus here on this far left, you can see here I can choose things like a code module or a contact form. I can add in a gallery. I can do all these things. So you can actually, if you start to think in rows and columns, you can really customize the design the way you want. Now I'm going to actually click this bin icon here at the top right to delete this section. All right, so we started off, this section was already there, and it wants us to add in a row for some columns. We've added in our single column. Now, there's a lot to sort of take in here, so I'll try and slow it down a little. At the moment, we've got our section, we've got our rows, we've got a single column. If I hover over the actual module, now we have a gray box. So if you look at the screen now, although the gray box is covered by a plus, you'll see there's a blue box at the top left. It has an arrow that I can click and drag to move around. It has a cog that I can change some settings and a few other bits and pieces. The green has something similar. Same little sections I can go into and edit. The cog is where we find most of the settings we want to play with. So if I click on the cog here, which is the same on all of these, for the gray, click on the gray box, gray cog, it should bring up the options for the module, which is the menu that we chose. Content, main menu. Here we have logo. So we can add an image. I can just go in and add a custom image if I want to that's completely different. Maybe I want to add for this one a white version of the logo. We can't see it because it's on a white background. So maybe I choose to make the background of this menu black. And there you can see I have this black logo image and everything sitting off to the side there. So I'm actually going to, what I'm going to do though, I'm going to, in this background area here where it says background, I'm going to click on the color and I'm going to choose this circular logo just to remove that background color. What I'm going to do instead when I go to the logo is I can click on this, X out of that. I'm going to hit the bin icon to remove it. And you'll see these three little, it's like 3 discs and a plus. If I click on that, I can choose the website logo. So this means whatever logo I put into Divi is the logo that's going to show up here. I don't have to come into the builder and change it. So that's a pretty handy thing to have. Now that's also pretty gigantic. So you'll notice with this here, there's little areas you can go into and change. The background is where you can change background colors. You can add an image if you want to. Although I wouldn't add that to the module because it'll only add a background to the module and not the full section. The logo is where we choose the logo, which is the site logo, and content shows which menu we're choosing. But if we go here to design, this is where we find a lot of the settings we want to play with. So I'm just going to resize this so we can see the whole thing. If I click layout at the top, I've got left aligned, I've got centered, I've got inline centered, so I've got like the logo of bits and pieces around it. Now, what I can do is I can change all these settings and get things looking a certain way. I can change the font in the menu to something completely different. Crank up the size. And so I've got a few options there. I'm going to go back to default. So you can see you've got a few options here under the design for the menu text. You can go through, choose your font size, have a play with it, and get it looking the way you want. And this image tends to just sort of move over out of the way. But if you keep scrolling down, you've got different color options. So if you have a drop-down menu, you can choose the background color, the line color, go through and play with those, the mobile icon color. So if I click on this dot down the bottom here and choose, say, tablet, you see I've got a little mobile icon. I can change that to red if I want to here. Although it's not showing up. The mobile menu background color, I should say. So I've actually chosen the wrong one there. We've got the mobile menu. This is all background colors, I should say. Drop down menu, sorry, icons. Got a little bit off track there. There's a lot of options here, so have a play with it. But I can choose the hamburger menu icon color, which is this. I can make it purple if I want to. Yellow. I'm going to stick with the green. I can change the size of that, make it nice and big. So you can sort of get the idea. This is just too big at the moment, so if I go to icons. Now you've got a section here for the logo. You can round the corners of the logo. You can add a border, which I think looks pretty bad. And you can change the styles of the border. Like, this is really an area you want to have a play with. But I can do things like change the hue of the image if I want to. There's so many options here. It's really, we're going to do a series on the builder itself so you can explore this stuff. But sizing is where we change the width. So the logo width, we can make it 40% of the area it has, or we can make the max width. We can even type in a value such as 600 pixels, and we can just crank that width right up. Maybe we make it 300 pixels, and it'll be no bigger than 300 pixels. And then your items to the left will be next to it. So you can change all these little settings here. You can change the width of the whole menu. Set a max width. You can align it to right or left. If I change that max width down and I align it to the right, you can see it sits over to the right. I center. I'm going to actually remove. So where I've got max width, I'm going to click this little arrow here to remove. You can see how easy it is to play around with that layout just with that one module. But I don't think that's the best way to do it personally. I actually think what you're better off doing is if you go into the module settings again, hover over the gray area, click the cog. If I'm going to go to logo, I'm going to bin the logo altogether. And then when I go over to the design and the layout, it's left aligned, it's centered, it's whatever I want it to be. I'm going to change the alignment, so the menu text area here, I'm going to go down to text alignment, I'm going to make it right aligned. So I just have this logo, this little menu sitting off to the right here. What I can do, I've got some spacing. If I hover around, you can see these little boxes appear. I can adjust the spacing of the whole section to make it smaller. What I'm actually going to do is here, when I hover over this green column structure, I'm going to click on it. Instead of having one big wide column, I'm actually going to find something a little more interesting. Maybe this here. So we've got one thin column, one big wide column, and another thin column. Now the menu has been crammed over to the left. I'm going to hover over it, click the arrow, and just drag it over until I see that little box appear and drop it in there. On this first column over here, on the left, I'm going to click plus, and we're going to add an image. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to click, and we are going to grab that white logo and upload that image, which you can't see at the moment. Now I'm going to actually hover over the green column area and click the cog button, because now what you can see, I have these three columns and they all have a cog next to them with individual settings. So I can actually click on the first column, which has our logo, click on that cog, and now I get some options. Get into the background, I can make it black, and now I have this black background for that column. I click tick. Another thing I want to do, I'm going to go over to design here and just show you some of the possibilities. I'm going to go to design, and where it has sizing, I want to equalize the column heights. And this means the columns are all going to be the same height regardless of what content is actually in them. So that's pretty handy. What I'm also going to do, I'm going to scroll down to spacing, because it's very tightly knit in there. Where it has padding at the top, I'm going to add 20 pixels, add another 20 pixels. And I can adjust this back and forth. Now, one thing you may notice, I've actually added spacing to the entire column section. So I'm actually going to go and reset that. So that's a mistake I've just made. I'm going to go back to content, click on my first column, design, spacing, and I'm going to add some padding. I'm going to say 15 here, 15 there, and you see I've got some spacing. I can also do the same left and right, so I might go 15 again, 15, and now I've got a black box behind it. So I've got a few, I can play with it a little bit. I'll do the same over here with the second column. I'm going to add a little bit of spacing. So design, spacing, maybe add 20, 20. I'm going to add 10 and 10 left and right. And over here, I'm going to add something else. Maybe it's a button. I click plus. I choose a button module, and I can say subscribe if you have like an email newsletter or something. I can add my link in here for that. I'm just going to put a hash. One thing I've noticed is that it's not really in alignment with that text. So I'm going to go over to design again, back to spacing, and at the top with the padding, I'm going to reset that. That actually pads the button itself. The margin, I'm going to add 10 pixels until I'm happy with it. At the moment, that is what we're looking at. But maybe I want this cool effect where the black is the height of the whole section. So I can actually hover over my little row here, which contains our columns. I can drag that up. I can drag this up as well. Hover over the blue again, do the same. And I have this cool little inline navigation I can use, which I think is pretty cool. So you can go through, build whatever you want to with that builder, and get a really good look with what you're doing. So I'm actually going to save this. I'm going to click the X at the top right, and then I'm going to go to Save Changes, because you do have to save changes in the theme builder for it to apply. Now at the moment, that header is across the entire website, and we don't really want that for some reason. We don't want to. We want to only have it on a certain page. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add a new template. And specific pages, I can choose things like categories for posts, or I can make it for all blog posts. So let's say we'll do that. We'll go all blog posts, create template. You see I've got the header here. I can go over to here and bin it. Now, another mistake I've made. I don't want to do that. I'm going to actually turn that off. So I'm going to right click. This has 3 little dots here on the right. I'm going to disable global. And you see I've got my header there. Now I can bin this one. So now I have my header, which is only for blog posts. So I'm now going to save my changes again. So you can see here by hovering over these and going to the cog, you can see how many different areas you can apply either the body, footer, or the header of the theme builder. It's very intuitive, very, very handy tool. So now if I head back out to the main site, we're going to see our original header to start off with. So if I go to our blog, open up a blog post, now we have this other header here that looks a bit different. So it shows you how easily you can actually customize your site from section to section. If you wanted to rebrand a section just a bit differently, you can do that. It's very handy. So that is essentially how you can customize the header. Now, if you're a little bit concerned about doing this yourself, I've got a video coming up next in the playlist that's going to show you how the page builder works for Divi, so that you can customize it and get a really good understanding of how it works. So that video is going to be on the screen here, and so check that out if you want a bit more information. Otherwise, I hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.